We're here at the property. I've heard stories before, and then I've heard that even your neighbor will collaborate or, will confirm it rather. Have aliens ever landed here?
Absolutely.
Tell me the story. I want to know the story, the true story.
Absolutely. And I'm, they wouldn't, they can't now because they both passed. But the Petties, and there's Petty Lane when you're coming in here, but two roads before mine, they saw them also. I just happened to go over to talk to him one day, and he just about buying some property because he owns on the other side of the lake, and he also owned part of the piece connected to us, and I was interested in the piece on the other side also. But anyway, I really never have got into talking about it a whole hell of a lot. I just kind of make light of it. And but when I was sitting in his living room, he asked me if I saw, and I didn't say much. I just said, well, I think I know what you're talking about. and his wife was in the kitchen, and they were in their 80s, and he said, right over, and it's right, where the lake comes back up into a little cove here, where no one could have seen but him and I. And as he started talking, his wife walked in and tried to shut him down. And she said, I thought we agreed not to discuss this with anyone.
Was she afraid that he was going to
go crazy? She was afraid that they were going to both get locked, just get put in the old folks' house. Okay. But
this is about when, by the way? About what year?
This is about the first time I mentioned aliens. I don't even remember what year, actually. I'd have to think about it. But he said that he saw a saucer come in and hover right there.
How big is it?
And
how big do you see?
You're talking about a 150 foot.
Okay, it's pretty good size.
And hover and then lower down where it got down out of his sight, because he lives over the hill right there. And he said he started yelling for his wife to come out, and he was on the back porch, and he yelled for her to come out, and said, just stand there, just wait, I'm telling you, just wait, and so she did, and he said it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden, sure enough, it raised up and gone. They both looked at each other and agreed they would never ever say what they just saw. And I'll tell my story in the book.
I like it.
You look across over here at how the trees are grown on that final piece. That's the way this property was. And I cut trees here for 2.5 years. And I wore out, I don't know how many chainsaws and cleared everything. That field right there, they actually grew in some crops, but the rest of it was just grown like that is grown. Wow. So to just do nothing but, and I just wore shorts and was tan like you wouldn't believe. And just every day I cut trees and burnt trees. And then by the end of the day, I was on the water and water skiing and fishing. And, so, I mean, I had a little different
and then there's
upbringing than people might think.
This is, I mean, I think the thing is, I think a lot of people, they see you now and over the years what you've rolled in the track with, and they thought everything was given to him. But it seems like one item at a time.
When he cut the cord. That was the end. He said he never spent another penny, and he never spent one.
Never met your dad before today, but just being in there with him for a few minutes. I have a better understanding of Scott Bloomquist now, just talking to your dad. And it's very interesting.
If you spent more time with him, you would probably understand me even more. Probably one of the most intelligent people you'll ever be around. I think maybe the only person that's ever made it to being chief pilot for jumbo jets flying around the world without a day of college.
Wow.
Just all self-taught and self-motivated, and that's probably that's where I never look back on anything. And watching him, like he built Auburn boat tail speedsters. He built like Cobra replica cars when I was a kid. You know, the Cobra, the fiberglass kit cars, and then there was an airplane, a biplane that someone owned that he ended up getting very cheap because there were 3 very good pilots that tried to fly it and ground looped it and crashed, and he asked me to take him to go pick it up, and I get there, you know, I said, and he tells me the story going there, and he said, they don't know how to fly, you know, whatever. I said, so you're just going to take off, Dad, and you're just going to fly it back to your airport? And
this plane has been crashed.
Can you take your time so I can be there when you get there? Because, I mean, if 3 others that are supposed to be good crashed, I'd like to be there at least. And he set it down like it was nothing, you know. So that's where I've had pilot friends of his tell me that your dad's the best pilot that's ever lived. I'm like, oh, wait a minute now. I mean, you can't say that. He said, your dad is the only pilot that's flown for an airline that's never crashed a simulator, no matter what they threw at it.
Wow.
No, they throw enough stuff for everyone to finally crash, and he never
They couldn't break him.
This is a plane I soloed in. I was 16 years old, and he taught me to fly, and we were still in California, and I soloed at 16, and we're half on this plane. It's a great flying airplane. It's a Tabria Champ. This yellow plane here is my plane. Won 13 of 14 Summer National races,
right.
and the 14th one, the last one, Billy Moyer spun me out leading when I passed him.
And
After I was passing him, and then he spun me.
And you still think about that.
And, well, you don't forget it because you would have had 14 of 14.
Be perfect.
But when I got back, and growing up in California, you just always think you want something, or you just think that something's going to make a difference in life. But I just always wanted a 911 Porsche whale tail, you know. And so when I got back from that Summer National trip, and when I got back, I got to looking, and I found a convertible, charcoal gray, red interior, whale tail 911, and bought that and had it for a while, and I had a little bit of fun with it, but I ended up trading that for this yellow plane here.
What do you love so much about this plane?
This plane, this is actually the plane that they taught all the pilots that in the Second World War that couldn't fly when they were trying to train pilots. This was a training airplane. It's one of the easiest flying airplanes. It gets off the ground extremely quick, like his big plane's going to too, and it'll fly at 50 miles an hour. Let's say I've been out in it once when a mag started messing up, and it's ba 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 ba, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it back. But one thing I'm confident with this plane, I can fly it over the lake, and I've crashed skiing going more than 50, okay, and I just jump out, because when you fly, you can leave the window open,
right.
and it's just you're just out popping around the hills, and I knew. You know, I just jump out. When I got close to the water, I just get down there and just let go.
You have put a lot of thought into how you get out of these airplanes when they're about to crash.
Absolutely.
That actually worries me what you've experienced. I have to think about that.
The good thing about airplanes, though, unlike helicopters, is a helicopter, when it quits, it goes straight down, yeah. And an airplane keeps on gliding. But this is a World War I plane that before they had timed the machine guns to the camshaft, they had to shoot over the prop. Okay. Then later it went on. But my dad built this airplane here completely from scratch, including the aluminum, spun all those little circles on a drill press with a wire brush, going shh, 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 wow. And just laying them out. All this is fabric.
Huh.
Same as that plane he's building.
So it makes it lighter.
All the cables and just all. That's why you have airplane. I mean, birds. You ever pick one up? They're light. That's why they fly. So, but this is the most beautiful airplane in the. in the sky. Because
gorgeous.
when we get back and you see those big zeros on the top of the wings, when he does a big bank turn over those green hills, it's awesome. But when it's like the original plans for airplanes are original plans, all right? And there's big fields they take off in, and if things ain't right, they just lift and set it back down. So when he commits here, he's committed. So he took this airplane off, and you see this wedge right here? Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't there. So this was down where the plans said it should be. And when he took off, because the angle of attack of the elevator here, it did nothing but climb, and it wouldn't do nothing but climb. And when he throttled back, it was just going to stall because it was still staying at a climb attitude. And he ended up finally pushing hard enough on his stick to break the stops in the floor to get it leveled off and brought it back. The next day, he built this wedge, took off the next day. Plane's been perfect ever since. He hasn't changed a thing.
So clearly he gets dynamics, he gets angles, the construction.
Well, and the yaw and the wings is all, all this, there's a certain amount of angle has to be. You can see the yaw, that's basically the yaw and the wings. All that has to be precise. And you use those cables and all this stuff to adjust it all.
So with all of his knowledge of this, have you ever leaned on him when you're trying to design something for racing and you can't quite figure it out?
Everything I come up with new, I run by him.
Really?
Everything. And just ask him, but he doesn't have, it's just because I like him to respect me for some of the thoughts that I have and to see if he has anything to add to it. And sometimes he might, but most of the time he just goes, we'll see.
When he says that, does that concern you? Like,
no,
I'm missing
not at
something?
all. No, because I just know that I think different than he does. Sure. Like this is his world and that's my world, and he doesn't cross over. There's some things that definitely do, but what it takes to go faster in a race car, even I've been humbled by thinking one way and learning another later and learning the way you were doing it, which made total sense at the time. Then you do it the opposite, and then now you get a whole new understanding of what makes sense.
Have you got a good example of that, something in your career?
Absolutely. It's really it's so bizarre because, and it's something that, and he's always had some input. It's always like unsprung weight. Okay, you understand unsprung weight? Okay, unsprung weight, the biggest thing with unsprung weight that people, if anyone's ever drove a dually that has real heavy front suspension, you can understand unsprung weight. You go into a corner and it's got some bumps in it, you will, if you're turning, you will not keep turning. You will shake off the corner because the suspension cannot stay on the ground because it's so heavy that the shock can't control it. The spring can't get it back on the ground fast enough. So it just hovers over the bumps. So you lose steering and you just start shaking off the road. Yeah. So unsprung weight, in theory, should absolutely be faster to keep your tires on the ground, having your rear end, let's say, okay, being ultralight, your rotors, everything connected to the rear end so that the rear end isn't so heavy when it hits a bump, it doesn't continue going up. Mm-hmm. It comes back down quicker so you stay on the ground better. So you have more traction, supposedly. Okay, so then along in life, so I actually went as far as getting rid of my quick change rear end and using just a regular rear end that had the quick change in the transmission. Doug Nash built them back a long time ago and won the first World 100 with that setup in '88. And anyway, so as years go on, next thing you know, we're testing and we're putting we try a piece of lead on the left rear tube, like 20, 30 pounds. And it was faster. You got to analyze everything that's part of the whole equation because with a stiff sidewall tire, it just like a dually or whatever, with something real stiff, when you hit a bump, the tire doesn't dampen the bump like it does in our race car. Our sidewalls on our tires are so thin that when you hit a bump, the tire absorbs it first before the shock ever moves. Mm-hmm. Then tire goes so far, then it sends the load to the shock once the tire is compressed as far as it's going to.
Go.
Then the shock starts moving. So most people don't realize that when they work on shocks are never in real time with the bump.
Secondary.
They're always behind.
Yep.
And you can do some things. There's some things with shock absorbers that we've messed with that you can actually delay the timing of when the shock reacts, either by weighting certain parts or doing different things. And I've experienced it to the point where at a track that you could feel all the bumps in the steering wheel, and then you do this to it, it changes the timing of the piston, and it's just smooth as glass. And you're just like, man, okay. There's so many things in racing that you thought were absolutes that are not, and that may continue to change. And well, that's life. Absolutely.
This is a beautiful plane.
This plane here was actually, this is a Rumpler. It was in the movie Lawrence of Arabia.
This plane?
Yes.
From your dad?
And they, but it was, no, here's the deal, they crashed it. And it was overseas where they made the movie in a barn, and somebody bought it and brought it to America. And it was in such bad shape, he said he could have probably built it from scratch easier, but he restored it to better than anything ever was when it was new. That's kind of the thing that he had some people from Hollywood want to come out and maybe do some footage with his Gotha once he got it done. And again, he's got this Sopwith pup that was the first one to shoot one out of the sky. And so, and maybe wanted to get some footage, and they're absolutely right. When they told him, they said that these planes are too perfect. There were never planes like this back then, and there were not. He ended up going and deciding to build, even though he's got this Fokker triplane here, which is the same type of plane, just like the Red Baron flew.
Right.
He went.
It's beautiful.
And decided from there that he was going to do the research and build one that was absolutely 100% like they built them when they were done back in the First World War. So this airplane is going to be a triplane like that one.
Okay.
But if you look, this is all been hand brushed. And they actually figured out back in the First World War that the brush strokes swirl here, okay? Just like this. That's how the brush strokes goes, just like I just drew on the back.
Yep.
Okay? The sides of the plane here, the brush strokes go this way because obviously there's high spots. When you're hand down like brush strokes,
right,
you can see the strokes. So there was less drag because you weren't riding on as much surface. So they actually figured that out back in the early 1900s, that, rather than one that was slick like that. So this is going to be absolutely original. He bought these tires here from Harley Davidson, brand new, and he saw me buffing tires, and he saw how good I was at buffing tires. So he wanted me to make a set look like originals back in the First World War were. So these slicks, I took 2 brand new Harley tires and made them look. And there's been guys that are big aviation nuts come in here and go, "Where did you find those tires?"
Scott, this place is better than most museums.
Oh, it is a museum.
It's amazing.
Another really good story that's going to come, and I could have showed them to you back there. I can still take you back if you'd like to see them. But anyway, I don't know if very many people know this, but Bill Simpson was a World War I enthusiast and built World War I airplanes for a hobby.
Really?
But nothing he ever built ever flew. So he saw some pictures of my dad's stuff in a magazine with me and stopped me at the trade show and said, "Hey, I heard your dad flies all of his World War I stuff he does." And I said, yeah. He said, "I've got something for him I'd like you to give him. I'll send to you." He said that these need to fly, and anything I do is never going to fly. And then I'm like, okay. And he sent me these 2 crated up boxes and there was a note in it. And he was over in Germany at von Richthofen's museum, which is the Red Baron.
Okay.
And his cousin was running the museum, and he was there with a Formula One driver, and he spent the whole day there because he was a big enthusiast. And the guy must have really liked him. And when he left, he said there'd be something, waiting for him out when he left, and they were in these boxes. And the guy, he said, "You take these home." And well, in the box it said these wheels flew on the Red Baron's airplane. And so they're the original spoke wheels off of, and that's what's going to go on this plane. And so that's pretty big.
Is there any world where your dad would ever sell any of these?
You know what?
That
Don Blankenship offered to buy all of them and build a museum and
Really?
put his name on the thing, and he told him, nah.
It's not what it's about for him, is it?
He really doesn't. We've had Discovery, Explore. He had many different people that have approached him on the Gotha project and wanted to do a documentary, and he really just, and I guess, even though I might play, I know how to play the game and this deal and all, but most people wouldn't really believe that I really like staying under the radar myself, and he really likes staying under the radar, and he's taught me a lot about it.
I think you read my mind a little bit, actually, when you described your dad. That's actually how I envision you. I know when you're in that light and they put that camera in your face, you're going to be honest.
We're going to go with it.
But you're not going to go chase that camera. That's not who you are.
No.
Again, meeting your dad for 5 minutes, it allows me to get a better idea of who you are.
Yeah.
Well, this is amazing building, and we really appreciate you showing us around.
Yeah, no problem.